Alrighty, welcome friends to what is our first Summoners War Rush video. We'll be doing a quick tier list breakdown for you guys. Since this is my first one, I'll try to be a little bit more comprehensive, but so this doesn't go on too long, let's get it started. I think Ophelia, I have to put her at the very top, which sounds absolutely troll because when you look at Ophelia's kit, it is absolute buns, like garbage tier. The only benefit that Ophelia has, which is a godlike benefit, is her 5A Awakening gives a 5-second Endure. This essentially makes critters playable. It'll make your TOA playable. PvP, you'll need her for sure, especially because Comtos has been making a big push towards PvP recently. World Arena, Guild versus Guild, as well as the Gianna rankings. In my eyes, Ophelia will be a staple, and even if, say we get another 5-second Endure unit, there's no reason why you wouldn't play Ophelia as well. So in my eyes, she's pretty close to future-proof, and should be in everyone's main arsenal. Let's round out the rest of the top meta with these 4 units. In my eyes, these 4 units are the best units in the game. Starting off with Shazam, um, I've said it before, if you don't have Shazam's 5A Awakening skill, you are playing the game on hard mode. You are nerfing yourself if you do not have this person 5A. He makes TOA so much easier. He'll make any PvP content easier, and especially in Rift, if you don't have Shazam 5A, you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot, trying to CC chain everything. If you misclick or if you miss formation, you're getting half your team blown up by an ultimate. He is essentially crucial for nearly all content. And his 7A skill as well will give you that crit damage dealt buff, which is really fantastic. On top of that, Trinity's crit damage skill on her 7A will stack with Shazam, and her 5A skill will give you an AoE damage up. I think these two are absolutely perfect partners. And on top of that, Trinity does give that crit rate up. She's basically a jack of all trades. We have Dusky and Kraka. They'll be pretty similar. They'll both give your team damage dealt up based on the dot that they do. So Kraka will do bleed. Dusky will do burn. Not only that, but Dusky also applies fear, which applies a defense break. So these 4 units are absolutely tapped. But moving forward, let's go to the bottom of the tier list. Let's fill out with these 4 units first. Sadly, Chi-Chi, Rigel, Viger, Bernard, all are benchable. Originally, especially in the early days of the game, we saw a lot of use in Naraka as well as Guild Boss because they did provide a lot of defensive buffs. The problem is because of the rise of Shazam, these 4 aren't really needed, and those slots that they would have taken, you'll easily replace them with any other DPS unit that we have on our roster. And when I say any DPS unit, I mean any DPS units except for this guy, who is absolutely terrible. But to fill it out, sadly, I think we have to put Alucia in here. I know she does do very, very serviceable damage, especially for early to mid-game accounts. The only problem is we just have better DPS units, even at low investment, that Alucia, even though she does do very good damage for a non-legendary, in my eyes, you wouldn't really want to level her outside of getting the book upgrades. And let's also throw in Lapis. And let's throw in, I think, Prelia as well, sadly. So Prelia, she may see some niche usage in Guild Boss to help with survivability for the Guild Boss ults. I don't really think that it matters that much or she makes as much of a difference as she used to. Lapis, her problem really is the same because even though she does provide crit rate up for melee units, it just doesn't stack with Cassandra. And you don't really need that uptime because Cassandra's buff's going to be 10 seconds with Trinity providing crit rate up as well. She may see some play in Conquest if she has her life drain. I just don't think that's necessary either because Shazam will either be tanking or the stacked shields will be enough as well. And the last unit let's throw into here, if I can find her, will be Tetra. Um, Currently, the problem with Tetra is that we have not run into a wall where graze rate matters at all. So her abilities essentially there's nowhere in the game that it's useful. We don't have any enemies that are able to heal, so we don't need the heal reduction as well. Sadly, I think these units in the bottom, they're all just going to be an afterthought. Um, but moving on to the next part of the tier list, let's put in a few units here. We'll throw in Tessarion, Alicia. Let's also throw in Lucian here, and I think Verd. So the reason I'm going to highlight these 4 units is because they will match Naraka's weekly damage. So whether it's Bleed, Frostbite, Burn, or Poison, these 4 units could see play in rotations for those weeks if you don't have serviceable ones. The problem again, Verd has been replaced by Kraka, Alicia has been replaced by Annabelle, Tessarion more recently by Dusky, and Lucian, he's going to sit on the tier above because the only other poison proc that we have in the game is going to be Charlotte, and Charlotte only gains that Venom proc at 7A. So for most players, they'll be able to fill in Lucian for those Venom weeks to get that damage up. But Lucian, he really doesn't deserve any awakenings because he procs that Venom on his crit skill. So I think that he will see more play, but all 4 of these units, realistically, you don't need any investment. Tessarion will do the most DPS out of these 4, but you'd need him max awakened. And Alicia, theoretically, you can give her her 3A skill if you want to start doing any chain CC shenanigans, or she may see some guild versus guild usage with that as well. Um, but outside of that, Verd deserves no love, sadly. Let's round out the rest of this one. We'll throw in Charlotte here. We will throw in Anne, Shihua, sadly, as well, Galleon, and Feng. So Galleon, you could even easily make an argument that Galleon deserves to be in the trash cannot tier. He does have probably the highest damage upside out of the units, probably in these 2 rows, maybe outside of Tessarion. Once he does have his 7A skill, he does do extra damage to units under Venom, as well as any under a dot. The problem is, even with max investment, he's just not seeing the light of day in your lineup at this point. Feng as well, he does help with defensive capabilities, especially for Naraka and Guild Boss, but Shazam has kind of overtaken him in that as well. So if you don't have Shazam built out well, you could theoretically slot in Feng, but these units are mostly going to be benched. Anne and Shihua, they're very, very serviceable DPS units, especially early to mid game. The problem is both of them, you're only using them for their DPS as well as their crit damage up for ranged units. But that role has kind of been replaced by Brandia. So it doesn't really make sense to use these 2 units when you could just throw in Brandia for the same effect. Chason, healing is still something that we're not really using just because the DPS, whether it's for PvP, you're going to get blown up much quicker. So she may see some play in guild versus guild on weak teams. The only reason I'll have her above here is for Conquest. She could have some usage for those prolonged fights. And she does have a weak for tower defense, the weekly tower defense, where she is very useful. So still a trash can, but one of the more useful ones. And let's round out the rest of the niche tier. I think Ariel, Celestia, and Delphoy, if I can find her. So starting off with Delphoy, theoretically, you could argue that she should be higher because she does do a consistent crush damage up for your ranged units. I just don't think that she'll have a slot for your stage teams because her damage is so weak. The only time she's really seeing play nowadays will be in some stages of Rift to chain CC with her sleep. But outside of that, she's not seeing much usage. Ariel is a pretty bad tank, but he sees play in Conquest as well as on the 3rd team for Guild versus Guild. Most likely you'll see him phased out eventually, but he'll remain in the niche tier until then. And next we have Celestia. You could even argue, I think Celestia could be higher because recently Comptuous has been amping up the evasion in Rift. So a lot of players have been seeing success with Celestia, and shout out to King Kato for this tech, but Celestia also helps amp your Naraka team. in consistency and in damage, there has to be some type of interaction between accuracy and graze rate, but from what I've seen and from a lot of other testing, Celestia has been a lot more consistent and has been a staple in those Dragons teams. And moving into the next tier, we have meta-ish. These are going to be units that are fringe meta for your team. Early to mid game, they're absolutely perfect to have on your team, but beware because these units probably will be replaced, especially as you develop your account more and more. So breaking down Cutie and Kali, these two are defense breakers for your team. Um, Realistically, you'll use Kali if you don't have QD at his 3A skill, but both of these will serve as very good defense breakers, especially into Rift. I've seen some teams progress very far just with Kali. Rina will probably see the most play out of all these units, especially in Rift, because she has the ability to strip shields. Endure is going to be a shield as well, so Rina currently outside of Digit is the only unit that can strip that shield, and that finds uses in PvP as well to break Ophelia's Endure, Suyuha's Endure, as well as some of Shazam's shields. So she seems to be the most useful out of all of these. Harmonia gives a very good uh, an attack buff for your team. The problem is Harmonia, her 5A skill and her 7A skill, it looks like she's built for PvP, but the lack of range, DPS, and how squishy she is, she's just really a filler for guild versus guild on your third team, in my eyes. She does see play in World Arena, but I still think that Rena's a little bit better, but she serves as a good buffer for your team in stages as well. Ceres will be the next one we'll discuss. Ceres is only here because of her blind. She does provide a crush damage up for your ranged units as well, but mainly she can be used for blinding, which will be really useful if you don't have Shazam at his 5A. She helps with survivability, especially while you're climbing. So I think she does deserve a slot here as well. Grogan, sadly, our king has been replaced by our newest unit, Seimei. So he provides a crush rate up for your ranged units. The only problem now is that we have so much crush rate buffers. We have Jaeger, we have Grogan, and we have Seimei. Most accounts won't need 60% crush rate for your units. Realistically, 40 is probably going to be enough. So Grogan has been kind of benched because outside of his crush rate up, Petrify is not going to do too much for you, and his damage is a little bit middling at this point. And Vanessa will be kind of similar. She provides an attack damage up for melee units, but her stun is going to be kind of useless, and she's pedestrian outside of that. Now let's get into the bulk of what our teams will look like. Let's start with the DPS meta units. These are going to be the best in-slot DPS units. Granted, just because they're not in the DPS meta, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to deal really good damage. Units like Melissa, Lima as well, they'll deal absolutely crazy damage. I think that just in terms of investment, I'd invest in these 5 units much earlier than I would the ones under. Like I said earlier, these 4 units will be your top priority for using Devilmon. I think after that, if you have the luxury, these units are definitely worth their 7A, but only after you have that top tier filled out. Um, the common thing with all these units as well, they spike at 7. So if you're pulling on these banners, my recommendation, either get 1 copy, 3-star is fine, and then if you can, 7-star after that. There's no reason to go for 4-star, 5-star, 6-star in my eyes. If you wanted to do for traits or something like that, you could, but they don't really see much of a difference in their kit between 3 and 7. Right now, Mago and Seimei are going to be probably the top 2 damage dealers. Trinity is in the mix as well. Brandia, Jaeger, Soha, all of these are going to be fantastic damage dealers. Mago, just to go into their kits really quickly, she'll do CDR for your melee units. Seimei, she does the crush rate up. She also strips immunity, which is very, very good for Rift. Brandia deals extra damage to single target. Jaeger essentially flies across the map and does more damage per the buffs he has. And Soha will be your attack speed up for your ranged units. She is fantastic as well. And to no surprise, the rest of the units will fill out the meta tier. But we'll kind of go into these super quickly. Firstly, let's start with Annabelle. Um, Annabelle, the problem why she's so low, I think originally I would have had her in the top meta tier. She's kind of fallen off for me in my eyes because outside of her 7A skill, so for those who don't know, she applies Frostbite, and her 7A skill will amp damage for your team if enemies have Frostbite. So that's one of the best buffs that she could have in the game. But outside of that, she provides no meaningful buffs for the team. She will do move speed down, move speed up for your team. Um, so I can see her falling out of favor for the team eventually. She still does very serviceable damage. That 7A skill is going to be very crucial. I just wish that they had more buffs in her kit. So you could see her kind of towards the end of this list because she just doesn't have enough at this time. And next we have Charlotte. So Charlotte, like I mentioned earlier, will be the Venom procer with her 7A. On her 5A skill, every time she crush hits a unit, she'll do a Venom debuff. So essentially you'll do more damage if they're under a Venom proc. So she has very, very good buffs for the team as well as being a CDR unit. Even if she isn't 7 and 5A, I think even at 3A she'll be serviceable unless you're clearing stages in like 4 or 5 seconds, then you probably don't need her, but she'll be a staple for most people while they're climbing. Lima is going to be Ceres, but on crack. Just so you do know, Lima, once she has her 3A and her 5A, if Charlotte has her 3A as well, you'll have near perma uptime on her blind. But even without her 7A, she'll be doing fantastic damage, and 7A is just like a cherry on top for more damage. Jian as well, she is an attack buff or attack speed buffer for the team. Her 5A does give her invincibility, which is very, very useful for PvP. The problem is outside of that attack speed buff, she doesn't really provide much to the team currently. You can easily see her being phased out once they do release more attack speed units. But for now, I think she does need to be a staple. Cassandra as well. The problem with Cassandra is that she is only there for crit rate up. I know that some people have kind of phased Cassandra out of their stage teams. In my eyes, I think she still needs to find play just so she can pair up with Trinity for the 40% crit rate buff. What that allows you to do is it gives you freedom for your gears if you want to start building crit resistance, if you want to start building triple, and it gives you freedom on a unit's trait to transition towards attack and crit damage. So I think even though outside of her crit rate up skill, she doesn't provide much, you still want her on your team. Arta as well is just a better version of Grogan. He'll provide crush rate up for your melee units, and more importantly, he applies damage resist down, which does stack with Seimei. So these two are a fantastic pairing. Sabrina is very, very good with DPS. So she'll amp damage from your ranged units. She will be an absolute staple as well. And I adore Sekhmet. Sekhmet's crit skill is an AoE, super useful for tower defense, for PvP. She does AoE damage up for your units, and if you don't know, basically all these units in the top tier will deal AoE damage outside of Cassandra. So she buffs every meta unit. And the last two that we have to mention are going to be Suyuha and Melissa. These two units as well, I think, deserve much, much love. Melissa, it's debatable, like for Melissa, Sabrina, Lima, at these points, if you want their 7A over these, they do very good damage once you do have those, but I'd say that it's kind of optional, especially if you're a free-to-play low spender. But she'll amp damage, especially for multi-hits. So for Seimei, who will do 7 hits essentially on her exclusive skill, Melissa amps her damage so much. Suyuha as well, she'll be adding defense down to enemies that stacks with QD or Kali. And specifically, she'll proc this when a unit CC'd. Originally, we had to run Grogan or Vanessa to pair with her. Now that we have Dusky who applies Fear, Suyuha still partners with Dusky, and these two are free to be benched. And I think this generally rounds out the tier list. These top three tiers outside of Ophelia will most likely make your stage team once you do have those 19 slots opened. If you don't have Annabelle 7 aid, feel free to bench her. She'll probably even fall down all the way here if you don't have that skill, and you can always bump one of these units up to help amp your stage team. Um, Obviously, there's going to be a lot of contention. Some people are going to be like, man, you disrespected XYZ unit, your tier list sucks. Well, yeah, you can go make a tier list on your own, buddy. But yeah, this will be my tier list. If you have any questions, any recommendations, because this is my first YouTube video, feel free to let me know and I'll try to pump out more content for you guys to enjoy. In the meantime, take care, take it easy, and I'll see you guys in game.